welcome to the Monopath podcast. I'm speaking with my brother today. It's Jamie Brookes. He is an actor, and so most of our conversation is dealing with his acting work. My main focus in this case was to speak about character and the terms of identification with a character. I wondered whether you could lose yourself in somebody else. The example I gave in the podcast was Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker, but there are countless other examples of method actors in particular losing themselves in somebody else. But with this idea of character, begged the question, should you play around with being somebody else? Is there some kind of utility to doing that? I have my own journey with confidence. I think it would be fair to say began with studying drama in high school. I get into that briefly at the beginning of the podcast. It'd be interesting to know if that was a commonality, if I share that story with anybody else who's maybe gone on to study something in the arts and they've found they've become more confident as a result. I guess if that's you, then let me know. One of the things I'm supposed to say about the podcast is that you should interact. The conversation really only begins at the point of a podcast. I don't really see any reason why that should end. So something has resonated with you, or something we have spoken about on the podcast has sparked a series of novel ideas, then you should get in touch. You can reach out to me in either one of the following places. That might be on YouTube. You can comment on the videos. You subscribe there while you're at it. Or you can email me through the website. So the website's now a thing. It's arthurjohndove.com. You can find everything that I'm doing there. That's kind of the central hub for the tea company, for the podcast, for the music. I'm currently working on setting up a Patreon page. I'll be honest, I don't really see it as the sort of thing I'm intending to use all that much, at least not at the moment. I just think having a way that you can support the podcast is better than not. We'll see how that one pans out. One last thing to say about the conversation with Jamie was that we introduced a couple of terms. Perhaps it's a false dichotomy. It's not quite clear to me yet. They are now, but we spoke about intrinsic and extrinsic inspiration. So ideas that are generated from your own experience or from outside your own experience. Those terms may be useful, but one of the things that I quite like about the podcast, I guess it's quite fortuitous, I hadn't really planned for it, but it's that these terms, useful terms, seem to find a way of self-fulfilling, and I'm trying my best to keep track of those terms just for the sake of consistency and clarity in the future. But I'm only human, I might forget some of those things, but feel free to point it out when I do. Anyway, that's all I need to say for now, so let's get to it. Jamie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Everybody laughs at the start because there's a little bit of weirdness.
Yeah, I think a little bit.
Let's do the full transparency statement and say that we are related. We are brothers. Hello. I haven't actually spoken for a while either, so this is quite nice. We're doing the formal conversation, though, today.
Cool.
The context within which I have asked you to be on the podcast is to talk about your acting work, something I don't know very much about, but maybe could I share you my story with drama and acting, actually?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if you know this, actually. You might already know this, you might not, but I started doing drama never any more than just a bit of fun when I was at school. But I remember, I don't know, maybe being about, I'm not sure what age you are when you're in year 9, but that was about the age that I started becoming a bit more confident. That's when teachers and our parents noticed that I started getting a bit more confident and able to kind of express myself a little bit more. And I do pinpoint, and I think mum and dad do too, they would say that it was doing drama and drama club. I'm pretty sure I did drama club.
Yeah.
I'm sure I did that. I think I did, yeah. I think I did drama club after school.
I did countdown.
I'm not making that up. I'm sure I did that. It's many moons ago. I don't really recall for sure, but I think I did drama club. So I did that for maybe a couple of years. And that really was the first introduction to being somebody a bit more, somebody who's actually able to open their mouth and have a conversation with another human without being crippled by anxiety.
Yeah, that helps.
Which was, that was more or less that's what I was like leading into that age. So that's kind of my history with drama. I do have a fondness for it because I do see it was it was one of those pivotal moments where it kind of set me off.
Like a bit of a catalyst.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a catalyst for change. And I think you can kind of look back on your own life, and I can do it with mine, and find lots of little moments like that seem to be bigger and more significant than others. But that was one of mine, doing drama. And it was always interesting for me as an older brother to watch you kind of go on and do more drama. But I think your story or your relationship to acting is a little bit different to mine, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think you'd always known that.
I'd say so, yeah. Yeah, I'd have thought. In the same sense of performing, I suppose we both kind of enjoyed performing in different respects. But yeah, definitely for live theatre, I kind of caught that one quick and realised. To be fair, I realised it was something I was relatively good at school because I wasn't really good at anything else. I kind of struggled with most other things at school, but drama was definitely something I could get into really easy and quite quick. And to be fair, it's quite nice playing someone other than yourself, like being someone different. So I think that is quite a nice, I suppose, escapism from whatever, from being at school and not enjoying school. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, I feel exactly the same about that. I always liked drama, and I use the same terminology now just in everyday life, but I do think I liked that idea of just being able to be another person and put on this mask and slip into a character. And I have conversations, I mean, more or less when I'm talking about something I would do publicly now, like hosting a podcast. But previously to that, running the recording studio, I used to say the same thing. And I would say that, listen, this isn't really me, me, the podcast host, or me, the owner of, the person who manages a recording studio. That's as kind of me, but it's also not at the same time. So I was never very, as I was just saying, never confident, never comfortable being me. I just felt I felt a bit ostracized always when I was younger. I still do. I just feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere and nobody gets me. Nobody understands me. Most people nowadays don't even want to give me a chance half of the time. So
Panic at the Disco song.
that's not what I was going for. Maybe there is one. We'll look into that later. I was hoping that you could maybe say something about that then, maybe to expand on that a little bit. What is it about the need to put on a mask? Is there a need to be somebody else?
I mean, I think I think there's only one place that I truly feel that I'm just being myself, and that's only ever one place, and that's at home with my wife. And that's honest. Like, even when you're out with friends, or if I'm at work, or even sometimes rehearsals and stuff like that, I don't feel like I'm 100% myself because different reasons. Work, you have a work facade, and you have to be. But I feel I have to be slightly responsible, have a bit more of a managerial head on sometimes, and kind of not crack the whip, but be a lot more authoritative than I would be in any other walk of life, and there's completely different like respect as when I'm out with friends, or especially in rehearsals as well, as everyone would testify. Is I end up joking around probably a lot more than I should, and that is a lot of what I like to do, but I wouldn't say it's 100% me. It's not what I'm like when I sit at home. I don't sit at home and just, take my cat Holly and make sex jokes all the time. That's not what I'm like. It's just, I suppose it's one of those masks you wear in public because it's what people become, they sort of start to expect of you. So in respect to like acting and why it's nice to put on a completely different mask is because so it's quite hard to explain. So you're not trying to be someone completely different all the time in your everyday life, but you are not being 100% you. But I don't feel that anyway. I feel like I'm constantly acting as a different person just to kind of match who I'm talking to or fit into the certain environment that I'm in. Acting and putting on that mask is a complete escapism from doing any of those things. So I don't feel like I'm putting on a mask in the sense of pretending to be funny and act out with my friends. It's more of a case of I'm just getting to get away from everything. I don't have a focus other than what I'm doing right now, which is being someone else. So, and it's not to please other people. It's because it's. I suppose it's because it's the role, and to a certain extent, it becomes a job because you're there to fulfill a duty. You're there to play a person the way it's supposed to be played. So, I guess I've gone way off course. Yeah.
No, you haven't. Yeah, I don't think you have.
I think it is great to be able to kind of push aside anything else that's going on in your life and have that one sole focus for however long you're doing it for, whether it's rehearsals, whether it's your shows that an hour and a half, 2 hours. I think it's great just to focus on being someone else, which is a really weird and almost sad statement to say, but it is. It's nice. It's nice to come away as well feeling that you've done a good job of what you were supposed to do, which is inhabit someone else's personality or mannerisms and idiosyncrasies and all that kind of stuff, like posture, everything, voice. It's nice to just not be you, to not listen to yourself and to your own thoughts and put yourself in someone else's shoes for a bit.
It makes me wonder, I mean, what do you think of this? Is it like, I know you've used words like escapism to describe it, but is it that, well, two things maybe. Is it that it's a taste of what it's like to be someone else? It's like trying on a different person. I mean, that's one part of it. I suppose the other part, you can answer them separately altogether if you like, is it that with acting, it's the only time that it's socially acceptable to actually be somebody else?
Yeah, well, I think more on the second one there, on the latter, is, I mean, I've done shows where you openly have fist fights and you scream at people, and it's something, I've been trained to understand is that you've got to kind of, when it comes to your acting, whatever, is to completely let go of any kind of rationale or human behaviour in certain circumstances, because I've done scenes where I've grabbed people by the throat, or I'm screaming in the face, and it's not things you do in everyday life because you hold back and you'd never do that. It's not socially acceptable behaviour to act in that manner, to do those things. I did a show called Scuttlers, which is about like street thugs in Victorian times, and it was all just aggression. But after pretty much every single rehearsal, the amount of kind of stress relief it gave you, it's incredible, really. It genuinely is, to be able to go somewhere and just scream at someone for an hour with no repercussion. You're playing a part, but from a personal point of view, like, especially, I'd come from work some days and you go straight from a 10-hour day at work straight to a rehearsal, scream at someone for a couple of hours, you come away, you feel like a new person. It's like having a hot bath with Radox and bubble. Do you know what I mean? It's extremely therapeutic, but I think that's why, again, so it's not so much putting on a mask. It kind of is an escapism in that sense of you do things that you would never be able to do in normal social situations. Like, I can't go to work and scream at people, and I can't come home and scream at Holly, but to be able to go out and be able to just release all that kind of stuff, it's brilliant. And the same with crying, to be fair. Like, as I've got older, I'm not a massive crier. Like, I just don't really cry much. I just don't have a reason to be upset. but in the same sense, certain roles or moments require it. And again, it's stressful. Even it feels great. It does genuinely feel really good just to let out, cry for a bit, scream for a bit, and it's like all your troubles are just washed away. So on a personal point, aside from actually acting and just what you're doing in that, it's great for yourself, really. I'd recommend most people just go and scream for a bit or go cry somewhere. It's great. It feels so relieving.
Yeah, it's funny. I at work sometimes it's some of the work I do. So when I'm at Lush, actually, I do this, and sometimes when it's a stressful day for some people. I mean, I don't really suffer from too much stress these days. I'm pretty chilled out about most things. When some people are losing their mind for one reason or another, I have given the advice before of going to the bathroom. It's a very small office, but go into the bathroom and scream as loudly as you can. Just go and scream. It's like, there's only me in here. I'm the only one who can hear you do this, but you just go in there and you can just go shout for a little while. And they go shout and they feel a little bit better about it. So I think that totally works because it's almost like it's a good excuse. I think you've got a good reason to do it. Then it's like an excuse. It's like, oh no, in that case, I'm just doing something for a practical effect. And it's a bit silly, but we're all okayed it. And it's like drama has the same function. One of the questions I ask a lot on the podcast is, what is the point in whichever art you happen to be a part of, music or whatever? So it seems like with drama, that is more self-evident.
Yeah,
it has a function.
Certainly in a lot of exercise and warm-ups we do, and a lot of things that I've learned over years is if you do it right, for again, different kind of acting requires different kind of emotions. So you wouldn't go through a range of emotions of screaming and crying so much if you were doing a pantomime, for example, because it's supposed to be over the top and silly. You're not supposed to be as kind of human, I suppose. But yeah, a lot of it facilitates emotion and facilitates how to learn the kind of biological reactions and to make you learn how to either control them in the way of working yourself up. So obviously, again, shouting, screaming and getting angry, your heart races, you go a bit red, you get a bit sweaty, everything tenses up. And it's kind of a biological reaction, but it helps you identify in day to day as well about kind of your own emotions and how you're, not how you're reacting to them, but how you're controlling them and how you are. So it's like I said, go away and go into the back and scream and stuff. You're getting to that point, and the best way to let that out is just to go and let it out somewhere. You can't do that in everyday life. You can't walk down the street screaming because you're angry. Because it's a crazy thing to do, I suppose. But doing the different exercises that actually bring you to these emotions and help you understand them is part of acting. Like, it's something that you learn not from day one. It's definitely something you learn doing much more naturalistic stuff and understanding how people react and how you react to certain situations and what makes you tick, what makes you angry, what makes you upset. But yeah, I think that's one of the greatest things, like on that side of stuff about acting, is that it does really kind of help you understand your emotions and help you understand when it's coming, and how to deal with that appropriately. And in the same sense, and like I said, if you're doing certain shows, you get to let loose on that and do things you wouldn't do in ordinary life.
I wonder if you could think of that as, I know we use the term trying on a different person, but it seems like it's a bit more complicated than that, and it's a little bit more like trying on different experiences.
Yeah, definitely.
To see how they fit.
I mean, I think one specific exercise we've done before. I mean, I did it at college years and years. So they talk about method acting, and I'm sure you're aware of bits and pieces about method acting and how it all goes. But one of the small things is what we learned it was called the Strasbourg session, and that was where basically you draw from all your own emotions. You use own horrific things in your past, and we kind of all sat around in a circle and spoke about whatever's going on in our past and how it made you feel. People left the room crying, people left in tears, people left angry. But I think the point of the exercise I mean, it's torturous, and I won't recommend it. I don't think it's a great thing to do, like in a group session. I think go off on your own, or come into your own little space and do stuff like that. But to delve into your own emotions and find out what triggers you. Yeah, it's not so much wearing another person and being another person, but a lot of acting is drawing from your own experiences. I personally feel that way anyway. The way I suppose manifest emotions when they're not really there is to draw from something that I've experienced in my own life, and that's what brings on my emotion. But at the same time, because you're on stage or you're in a rehearsal, it is quite a safe space in the sense of nothing bad's happening. You're using it for a purpose, but you're not. Don't know. You're not truly upset. And I know that sounds silly because you're drawing it off your own emotion. You're using something that has upset you before. You're thinking of, they say, think of something that's absolutely devastated you and use that and think about how your body reacts and then just go with it. And that's how you let it out. And that's how I let it out anyway. Again, everyone's different and people can just connect easier with things. I find it a bit more difficult. But yeah, you draw on something that upsets you, and it can be anything. It can be absolutely anything. You can use something tiny that makes you cry, something absolutely tiny, and if it gets you there, it gets you there. But it's, yeah, like I said, a lot of times it's not putting on a different person every time, because somewhere in there is you drawing from your own emotions to kind of to make it real, I suppose. Again, a lot of what I do is naturalism. And you have to bridge your physical to your emotional and make sure they're in sync, because there's no point in me standing on stage crying my eyes out, but the rest of my body looks relaxed and chilled out, and my legs, are stable. When you cry, you go a bit weak, you go a bit shaky, and if they're not kind of in tune together, which I think you need to. I think you need to draw something from yourself to be able to get to that point, again, personally. But if they're not working in sync, then you're not believable. And then the whole thing's done. Because as soon as you're up on stage and you're doing something that people are supposed to believe you are this character and you're not being believed anymore, the illusion's gone. And you wouldn't do a lot of hard work.
Is it that with these different acting methods, I know you mentioned a couple there, is it that it's just a gradient shifting almost between two different things, one end or the other? So you've got yourself on the one hand and your own experiences, your own emotions, who you are. And on the other, you've got this other person that you're trying to play, or this other emotion that you're trying to elicit. And you've got to shift the gradient and get the balance right in some way. And there's a percentage.
Pretty much, yeah. I wouldn't say there's so much of a percentage. I'd say it probably, I think it flips, because if you're going to have a real reaction and you're going to experience that real emotion, you do need to have a bit of you in there. Because again, another thing a lot of actors use is the magic if, which is a Stanislavskian one, a technique, which is about what would you do in this situation and how would you react. And again, that's something I use a lot of, but I put it into the character as well, which is it sounds strange, because then you think, well, there's not a lot of character going on. You do have to put so much of yourself into it, but at the same time, you have to stay true to whatever character choices you've already made, or whatever circumstances, and everyone given circumstances, is what the character's already got. So, as an example, when I did Billy Casper in Kes, scene real towards the end, and there's a lot of crying going on, but you have to still obviously enunciate and make sure everyone can hear what you're saying. So we use the magic if. So in my position, what would I be doing? I'd be crying like a baby. That's fine. You have to get to that emotion. You either drum up your own things, or you're in character, fully in character. But you drum up some of your own emotions, and then it's kind of keeping that voice and that posture and any kind of idiosyncrasies you've made for your character, keeping them intact whilst using your own memories and your magic of what would I do, what would I be doing, and kind of putting them into the character, but keeping that character separate. And then it sounds really confusing. it does when you explain it like that. But that's almost what it is. It's putting a bit of you into your character, but keeping your character separate so you can distinguish.
It sounds to me, you can correct me if this is not quite right or if I haven't quite got the right of it, but we'll soon find out. It sounds like then what you're getting at is that when you're kind of making a character or you're trying to fit into that character, it begins with you. So it begins with the actor's own experiences and then it becomes something else.
I think, again, every actor is different, so it's hard. I can't generalize and say everyone does the same. I'm only going on kind of my own method and what I found works for me. But to an extent, yeah, that is pretty much how I kind of devise my character, how I make my character. Is trying to think of what I would. I mean, there's a lot of other things like how your director works as well and what your director wants to see. So some choices you might make aren't what your director wants or aren't true enough to the character. So there's a lot of kind of compromise there, I suppose. But I make a lot of choices on what I've read and what I see of the character and the experiences. Obviously, you read the script first and you see your character's arc, your character's story, what would affect your character, what would make them feel like this. But you use your own kind of. I would play it as almost myself first. In naturalism, I kind of use myself as a basis. So I'm kind of the foundation of the character. That's how I would start it. And then as things come on, and like obviously you take direction from a director, or different scenes happen different way with other characters and how they're playing their characters, which make you change the way your character would react or how you act. So a lot of things kind of influence the final product of what you see on stage throughout a rehearsal process. But yeah, I think I personally start with me as the foundation of how I would react in certain circumstances, and then you build on things. So again, we do techniques like making your character biography. So any little things that you want to you throw in history, you throw in brothers, sisters. If it's not so, if the text has given circumstances where it says, this character has this, and this, and these are, wears these clothes, lives in this kind of house. Those are given circumstances that the writers put in. 9 times out of 10, you can't change. You don't change those things. They're kind of like an unwritten rule that you just don't change them. Anything else is kind of a free for all. Do as you please. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And again, like I said, it's a lot of work with the director to see, because they have a vision of what they want to see just as much as an actor has a vision of how they think it should go. But yeah, certainly, I start with myself first, and then the character kind of you work on the character to bring it to life, so it's not just you.
I get you. The reason I used the word gradient, I think we've probably clarified it a little bit more now, but the reason I used the word gradient is because it seems, from the outside, from somebody who's not really experienced with acting or doesn't know too much about it, if you look at somebody like any method actor, but I'm thinking of Heath Ledger playing the Joker, springs to mind, where you can take too much of the character on.
I mean, this is why I say things like the Strasberg session is one of those kind of method acting things that can be dangerous. I think it depends how far you're willing to go, I suppose. Again, I can't speak for everyone. I don't really push myself into method acting too much. If I get a job working as acting as a homeless person, I'm not going to go live on the street. It's probably not anything I'm going to really invest in. In terms of body transformation or the way I should look, I probably go more towards that, and that's something you could look at investing in. But yeah, you look at Heath Ledger and the likes like Daniel Day-Lewis and people like that. That's the extreme side of it. Very obviously Heath Ledger. I mean, he locked himself away for like 3 months or something, was it? It's great. I suppose it's great to get into the mindset and develop a character. For someone like me, I don't have 3 months that I can lock myself away and develop a character. It's more done on. I mean, I use a lot of the rehearsal time to help develop, because work with a good cast and you work with a good director, and they can help you develop as well, because they see things that you don't see. So it's not always a single-minded choice. A lot of things I've done before have been, I mean, there's one in particular, we did a show called Lyman Project. I played a kid who was about 16, 17. But it was supposed to be quite hyper and jumpy. And I can't remember what I was doing to start off with, but the direction I was given, I don't even think it was from a director, I think it was from another cast member, was like, why don't you tap your legs a lot, and almost like you just too energized. And that became one of my main parts, and it helps distinguish the characters. But yeah, as far as the method side of things go, like talking about grading, that's very high up. That's very, like I said, I think it can be damaging if you invest that much into a character. I think the results pay off clearly. Obviously Heath Ledger's Joker was brilliant, but it's a big risk to take, I suppose. You've got to have.
How do you know when to stop?
I think you've got to have a support system. The same in any walk of life now. I think you need people around you to be able to pull you back in. You need to have that kind of safe space where you can switch it off and come away from it and walk away. I think if you're living it day in, day out, it's hard. It can have lasting effects. I mean, this is a weird one to kind of compare it to, but people who go into things like Big Brother or I'm a Celebrity, a lot of these reality TV shows, but they have a lot of like withdrawals coming out of it. Love Island is one where they don't have a support system in place to kind of help them come out of it and live a normal life and go back to being the person they were, because everything's changed now. And it's a similar kind of thing in the sense of if you've inhabited that character for so long, and you're losing yourself, and you need people around you to kind of pull you back out. I think that's the only way. It's probably the only way you can do it. I can't see how it's, because I haven't experienced something quite so serious in terms of method acting, because it's not something I like to employ. But the only way I could see you kind of escaping that is to have people around you to pull you to where you should be and to the person you are. I think there's not a lot you can do about it any other way.
It may be just having a good grip on yourself as well, because as you said, I think one of the problems there is with trying on other people's experiences or trying to almost be somebody else is that it's a slippery gradient, and you can end up taking it too far and falling into someone else.
Yeah, I mean, again, Kez as an example is I think for a good couple of weeks afterwards, I still had an extremely broad Yorkshire accent. I couldn't drop it because I listen, I record my own lines and then play them to myself, and I play cue lines. And because I was so used to listening to myself in such a Barnsley accent, it stuck with me for weeks until people started pulling me on it and saying, why are you so broad all of a sudden? I'm like, oh yeah, sorry about that. I didn't even realise. And then you automatically stick. I think as long as you're conscious of what you're doing. Like I said, I had no idea I was going that kind of broad. And it was in fact it was Holly who was like, you've gone really, really broad there. I'm like, oh, yes, I have. I'm sorry, shan't happen again. Like I think it's harder for you to notice those weird those things by yourself. It's like losing and gaining weight. You don't really necessarily see it yourself, but someone who hasn't seen you in a while will notice it. And it's the same with those kind of things. If you're holding on to them, but you don't realise, is you need someone who knows you well enough to say, that's weird, Jamie. You need to stop that now. And be able to pull you back.
Yeah, it is like a safety net then in that sense.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. I don't know. There was one thing I wanted to kind of pick back up on. It's something you've skirted around a couple of times now, so I made a mental note of going back to it. But it was the role of other people, not just on shaping a character, but on shaping the actor, I suppose, as well. If I can be more clear on that, when you're on stage and you're working on character development and you're kind of developing this character history, whatever it may be, it's not just your choices. You said that it's kind of shaped by a director and the rest of the cast. Whereas with the private life, your own personal life, that's still shaped in the same kind of way? So when you're going out in public and speaking to people at work, or you said you kind of putting your managerial hat on, you're still being shaped by how other people respond to you and what the expectations are, the social expectations. What do you make of that relationship there, that kind of parallel relationship between those two things?
I suppose I've never really thought of it, to be honest. I guess it is very similar in a sense. Because again, in acting terms, in that sense of making a character, making inhabiting a role, it's not. It's what other people want from you. As much as you might have a vision yourself, it's definitely what other people want to see as well. I mean, a director, especially, the kind of book stops with them, and then it's kind of their show as much as theirs. Like, we might come away with the round of applause and whatever, but the director puts and the writers as well put a lot of work, and they've got a clear vision, and they're the ones who are trying to get that vision on stage with the actors. Got kind of, we are tools in their toolbox, I suppose. So yeah, it's the director's job to get you into where you need to be, where they see you being. You can only help by taking risks, I suppose, and by taking chances. The amount of stuff that we've done, like devise-wise and creating shows as groups, alongside directors, obviously, a lot of what actually ends up being on stage has come, obviously the director's got the main say, and the director will point to where you want to go and where you want to be and how they should be set. And a lot of times it sticks and that stays. But again, 6, 7, 8, 9 times out of 10, the final product has a lot of us in it as well. So a lot of the different cast members, by improvising, by doing something different, by taking a risk and taking a chance and doing something different, so that ends up on stage and that ends up as a final part of your character or part of the show. In terms of how that runs parallel to real life, I hadn't thought about it, I guess. But
the question I can rephrase.
Well, no, but
I'm asking you something about whether you can make yourself.
Whether you can make yourself. What, by yourself? You can make yourself by yourself, essentially.
Either really, like, to what degree do you make yourself, and to what degree is yourself imposed on you by others?
It's like that nature thing, innit, I suppose. Well, not quite, but I think you as a person, whatever kind of morals and ethics and definitely certain aspects of your life will be instilled on you by people, either like parents, for example, or work colleagues that they expect a certain level of work, or again, maybe jokes you can make that you can't make, but you come with certain friends and not friends. I think you as a person it starts with you. You probably know yourself better than most people know you. You know how you would react. You know who you are. But yeah, I definitely think people influence your life. I think I didn't make me, put it that way. I think as an example, Holly has had a positive impact on me as opposed to what I was, say, 15 years ago, as an example. Just in the same sense that I've met people through acting or through work or through friendship circles that have had impact as well, that either introduce you to new things, and it changes your attitude and it changes the person you once were to the person you now are. So yeah, definitely, I think a lot of people probably make you just as much as you make you.
Okay, I get that. I wonder what it is a difficult question, because that's my speciality. That's what I like to think about. I wonder how much you would chase a new relationship in your personal life, say with a new friend or with a new job, compared to a different role or playing a different character, because they almost seem like the same kind of thing. You're going to look to play a new character to try and experience, and you may not realize that you're looking to play a certain character, in the same way you might not realize that you're selecting friends for some reason. Like, you didn't really choose your friends either. they just kind of fit. So I'm really just pointing to the same parallel. There's just this same odd relationship between.
See, it's different. It's slightly different. So in a personal way, I think definitely the friends I like to surround myself with now, and but the way I would seek friendship is in nothing but a positive manner. I'd like to think. So, you surround yourself with people who are fun, who are like you, who have similar interests, or who can challenge you, and things like that. And that's that side of thing. I think with acting, I actually think it's different in the sense of if you're going for you say you want to challenge yourself with a different role, 9 times out of 10, again, I don't think I'd go for a role that is anything like me. I'd like to go something completely different. Like most actors, if you ask them, playing the villain's the best thing. Playing someone who is a bad person is the best thing. Now, in life, you don't try and surround yourself with bad people. But in that sense, you go for everything that's wrong when it comes to roles, or I personally would anyway. There's nothing better than being a villain or being something so like overtly kind of eccentric and ridiculous that's so far away from anything that is like you. That's what makes it interesting. That's what draws you in. So in that respect, they're the opposites, in fact, of the way you would be, wanting to surround yourself with people as opposed to the roles you go for. You want something crazy. You want something that's going to test you, that's going to take you out of your safety zone. Because again, it's the best way to build confidence for an actor who's maybe either lacking on it or just wants more. Is definitely to push yourself into something ridiculous or something that you would never get to do in normal day lives. Like I did Bottom in Shakespeare in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and that is a ridiculous character. You would never. I don't think you'd ever see a Bottom in real life. I wouldn't have thought so. There's probably a couple out there actually, but again, I never want to know Bottom. I never want to be around that person because he's just awful. But
just for people who may not be familiar with the play, do you want to say something about Bottom's character?
Yeah, so Bottom's an actor. He's extremely arrogant. Thinks he's amazing. He's pocketwalk. He's generally so obsessed with himself that everyone else is nothing to him, pretty much. He's just number one. He's number one, and he only looks out for number one. He's all about himself. Now, you wouldn't want to know about him. You wouldn't want to be around him. But again, at the same time, he's flamboyant, eccentric. He's a fun role to play because, the way he is no one would ever act like that. You wouldn't think anyone would ever act like that in real life. Like you hear stories about celebrities being absolute divas and whatever and have ridiculous demands. Well, I suppose that is what Bottom's like. But that's a character you love to play. You love to play someone like
that. Well, so there's your character in that particular play. I was going to say that I feel like I spend most of my time actually being more of this alien role. I think many people would describe me as a bit eccentric and a bit odd.
I'd go with that, yeah.
Anyway, so I kind of feel like I'm on the fringes of potential characters anyway.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say you're arrogant and selfish. That you don't have the negative traits of that character. Being eccentric and odd is fine, but the negative traits that you have.
No, and I mean more in the sense that sometimes I feel like one of the things I'm most satisfied with myself is that I'm not too bothered about how people perceive me. I do care about what people think about me, but I don't mind too much.
Yeah.
What I kind of prioritize myself. Like I've got to be comfortable with things that I'm doing in my own behavior before anybody else will tell me it's wrong. Like I think I'm a pretty good judge of my own behavior.
Yeah.
I guess this is similar to the question about a gradient between an actor and the person that he's trying to portray. But is it important to get that relationship, or how is it important to get that relationship right with Bottom getting it completely wrong and almost being this kind of free-floating, independent person who's so independent that he doesn't even have any idea or care about what other people think on one side, and somebody who's so dependent on what other people think. Say if you're the actor on stage and you just throw away everything that you instinctively would decide to do just because the director tells you to do it. Like, how do you get the middle ground there? How do you find that middle ground?
Again, a lot. Taking bottom in specific is because obviously I like to think it's so far removed from me. It's very much collaborative in that sense. Again, like I said, working with the director, like I'm lucky I work with a director who understands me quite well and is happy to push me into uncomfortable situations that she knows will get the better of, get me into a better place to play this character. In terms of a gradient of that is, again, because it's not so much a natural character, and you don't really draw much on your own emotions or feelings on it because it's so far removed. And again, bottom Shakespeare, it's almost pantomime. It's not supposed to be played with any kind of naturalism or it's not supposed to be real. I think it's a lot easier to play a character like that. It's almost like playing a clown in that sense. And it's just about taking risks, I suppose. It's about getting as creative as you can of making this character larger than life. And that comes from your voice, it comes from your posture, it comes from just not being you. So again, bottom, I tried to anyway, was hold myself differently. So I naturally shrug, as you can tell, and I have quite rounded shoulders because that's my poor posture. But as bottom, you would do something that would not be like that. So as we do a lot of status exercises. So status is, you're in a room with these different characters, characters who weren't as high as me, and you have to find where your social status would be within your character's mind. So in my character's mind, on a scale of 1 to 10, bottom's social status was an absolute 10. Pretty much everyone else was a 1. And in that sense, if you had that much of a higher status, you would hold yourself differently. You know, no matter how tall someone is, you would hold yourself in the. I mean, I'm like 5'4", if that. I worked opposite someone who was about 6'5", 6'6", and he was supposed to be someone beneath me. It's about enforcing everything that you can in your mannerisms, in your voice, in your posture, to make it seem like you are bigger and better. So status-wise, you posture up straight. I gave myself quite a bit of a bellowing voice. And, this is how bottom talks. You try and any way to distinguish yourself to make you more intimidating, I suppose. Make yourself seem more important. That's the only. Like I said, the gradients with a character like bottom is completely different. So far removed, it is more about being creative as possible and seeing how far you can take this character to get him to be as high a status as he thinks.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail going into that character development then. You would think. More than somebody who's sitting in the wings or in the audience would really appreciate. There's quite a lot of time-consuming process just kind of figuring out what a character is like. One of the things that you would think begins early on, given what we've been speaking about, is finding something to identify with in a pantomime character. The wording you use, like, how do you, like, what is it that you're really latching onto with a character who just seems so alien to you? I don't know if Bottom is the most alien character that you've played.
But definitely the most far-fetched. And I think the thing that you latch onto is, it's not so much for me with that in particular is I kind of moved away from personal experience a bit because, again, I didn't feel like I was quite as arrogant as Bottom. But you look at other things, you look at other, you take other influences from past works you've seen, from people you've known. I did rewatch. I watched Bottom be played in numerous different things to see how other people did it, to try and draw some influence. I watched things as an example. Ian McKellen in Extras with Ricky Gervais. I tried to draw on that a bit, and that's probably where the voice came from, to be honest with you. But you take things from character. It's caricature character, so you take things from something that is caricature, and that's what I did anyway. So you try and think of when someone's been arrogant or how they've tried to impose themselves and how how you want to see Bottom in or that character in Step. I definitely tried. I don't think I latch onto that as a personal one. It's definitely something I love doing, and I really enjoyed the character. But in terms of creativity or putting much of me into it, I did try to just take influence from other things and kind of mesh it into one character. I think when you're doing something so, again, caricature as opposed to natural, because it's so far out and eccentric and a big character and unrealistic and not natural, if you don't put a lot of yourself in, because you can't. I don't think I couldn't put much of myself into it. It was so far removed that you have to draw on other experiences and other things to kind of bring one full solid character together. There were certain things, there were obviously bits and pieces of me in there. Certain ways you deliver lines, you'll know it's you. You can feel it's you in there. And it's not very Bottom, but yeah, that's for the director to pull out of you and to stop that and to make sure you don't be slipped into it.
There's terms for this, I think. I've heard them used when, I can't remember who it was talking about mental health, really, but he was saying, he used the terms intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. And what they meant was, if it's something intrinsically motivating, it's something that, in this case, at least, it would be your own emotions. That's the position you base jump from, your own emotions, your own experiences. Yeah. If it's an extrinsic motivation, then it's something that begins outside of you. So it's more about a kind of your view of the world. And in this case, the extrinsic motivation for Bottom would be your perception of this general phenomena of arrogance.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Which is maybe something you don't have, but it's kind of what you look at when you see arrogance and you're doing that. So I just wonder if those terms are useful.
Yeah, I'd say they definitely are. Yeah, I think, again, because acting, you take on a range of different characters, not only, but different styles, like the different shows you do and the different performances you'll be a part of. You can't employ the same method every time. I don't think it would work, because different characters need that different kind of attention. So yeah, Bottom is definitely drawn from various different places, whereas something that you would be going much more natural with. So Kez, for example, I drew a lot more on myself for that, because that was supposed to come across more natural and more real. So you need to put something of you in there. You need to have that real emotion, that real connection, to make the audience believe that everything you're going through, you actually feel. Like, I did it. When I cried, I was genuinely crying. When I was angry, I was genuinely really angry on stage. As Bottom, I genuinely never felt like I was a big head and arrogant. I never felt like I was better than everyone else, but I just had to get everyone else to believe that. And I had to get it from other places, because I don't think, again, I don't like to think I'm arrogant. Maybe some people do think I am, but I don't think I am. Therefore, I can't draw on something that I don't have in my locker. So I have to draw from other places to kind of get my head around what arrogance is perceived as. Yeah, I like I said, I use Ian McKellen as an example, because he wasn't arrogant. I suppose he was delusional and eccentric. It was a bit different. But yeah, I had to draw.
The extra characters, Ian McKellen.
Sorry, definitely. Not the real Ian McKellen. He's brilliant. I saw him at Wakefield Theatre. Amazing. He's just an amazing person. But it's what you perceive as the arrogance, and what I've seen in day-to-day life. Whether it's working with someone who, like, I have worked with actors who have been very arrogant and who have thought they're a lot better than they are. And you do draw on little things like that. There was a scene in Bottom where in A Midsummer Night's Dream, where I over-accentuated words. You know, I made them way too ridiculous than they need to be, because that's something I've seen someone do, that they over-enunciate every word that they ever said to try and make themselves bigger and smarter and stronger. So it was the same kind of thing. The word was wall. The word was wall, but I used his arrogance and how he thought he was an amazing actor to say what, and make it sound stupid, but he thought it was amazing. Bottom thought that was the best thing ever. He thought that was Oscar-worthy acting, whereas realistically, from an audience point of view and everyone else watching, thought you're such an idiot. How can you think this is good? And that's just how big his arrogance was, how bad it was. He thought it was brilliant, and that's the point. Is I suppose you take that from other people. Yeah, definitely the two. I can't remember what you even said now, but
intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation. Actually, with those terms in mind as well, I guess this is not where I expected to go, but this is more about me. So I feel we began this conversation talking about ourselves anyway, and when we were a bit younger, and how we've grown up, and the kind of relationship we've both had with drama and performance art. I have always felt it as well, that most of my decision making about who I am, I kind of put that in air quotes maybe, but who I am, they're almost decisions made from the top. By that I mean like executive function, like I'm really thinking about it. Rather than I'm not really feeling all that much most of the time. That's not really going into my decision making there. It's all from the top down. What I mean is when I'm coming to think about how I should behave in public, it's not really because I feel a certain way. It's all because I've maybe read a book on what I'm supposed to do, and that's the only way I can learn anything. And apparently this is a fairly common trait with somebody who's probably got autism in some degree or another. But it's all from the top down. So you kind of, and that is how I do it. I remember reading about what it looks like, how confident people behave, and then just copying it. That's been my principle for practically everything that I've become. Is like, well, how long are you supposed to look at somebody in the eyes in a conversation? Let's get the amount of seconds or the percentage. And that I know you're laughing because it's silly, but that's my life.
To be fair, I don't think you're alone in it. I think a lot of people do it because as much as you've probably researched it and had a look at it and read about it. I think that's almost like societal guidelines as well. Is it it's what's socially acceptable, and I think a lot of people, again, out in public would, like you said, work from here first. Because if you lead with emotion,
you're tapping your head there.
But you start with top and you go with the logic and what you should be able to say and what you should what is allowed and what is acceptable. Again, the complete differences between your being in show and doing your acting and life today is that you can't lead it all with emotion. If you did everything off the emotions you were feeling, I was going to say there'd be riots in the street, but there literally is riots in the street. But you know what I mean? Like it would. You'd fight everyone. You'd scream at everyone. Everyone would cry all the time. Everything. I think to a degree, everyone kind of starts at the top and works from that point. I don't think you're alone in that. I think definitely that.
Well, I would maybe push back on it a little bit, but I think for most people, the sense I get is that actually, like you were saying with acting, is it begins with the emotions, and that's the thing that they pick up on first, and the kind of executive functions that a person has to kind of think is more like a blockade, so that the emotions don't run rampant, and so they can talk themselves out of their emotions sometimes. For me, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I very rarely have that experience. It's practically always from the top down.
Right. Okay.
I just, which is why so much of the time I say things that upset people, not because I'm being mean, but because to me it just reads as something that's obvious or true. And it's like, well, why can't I say this? A particular example was, I guess this was around the time we had the last general election, and I was thinking about, well, why should I vote? What's the reason there? Why should I? Not who should I vote for, which is what most people would answer that question with. They would say this particular policy or that particular person you should vote for. I was saying, why in principle should I get up out of bed and go to the voting station if I don't believe in the political system? And anyway, this is just how my mind thinks. That's why I go and study philosophy. That's just how I think. So I posed that question to some friends who did not take it very well. And so they got quite emotional about it, as if it was a given, and we of course you have to, and so on and so forth. You can probably imagine how that played out. And I feel still a bit kind of caught off guard and surprised by it, because I just can't I don't have those. I don't feel so much about those questions. They don't really carry that emotional weight for me. They're just questions. They're completely separate, and I just, I don't know how common that experience is for it to be always like that. But I do feel like it's practically always like that. Everything's just in the abstract. For me, it's all fundamental principles and ideas completely removed from people and everything like that. It's just it's all separate. Yeah. It's
in
hard.
a sense, emotions come secondary to the kind of logic and of the situation, I suppose.
Yeah, I can't help myself. Like, it's not a choice I'm really making, which, we were talking about how, to what degree you can make yourself with these things. I don't really feel like I have that much choice to be that way. I can't. I tried to get, my, like Dee, my fiance, is somebody who's the complete opposite in that sense. So she's very expressive with, she expresses her emotions, very in touch. When she's in a social environment, she can just talk to people. And that's bizarre to me. It's a conscious effort for me to practically do anything as a conscious effort for me. So just to have a conversation it's a conscious effort. So I find it really hard, which is why I keep these conversations about an hour, because after an hour, I can't do any more. It's exhausting for me. It's not even that it's not like I want to, and I'm sick of the person I'm speaking to. In fact, it's nothing to do with that. It's that mentally I just feel wiped, exhausted. This has turned into a bit of a therapy session, so thank you for bearing with me while I just
no worries at all.
put that on you. Okay, something I guess this is in the mind space of therapy and those sorts of things. We've kind of touched on it here and there, and you mentioned a few times the word risk. So I was wondering if you could say something about having a space where you can make risks and know that they're not dangerous risks. They're not life-threatening. The example that you gave, just to kind of remind you and give the full context that I have here, we were talking about you with character development, working on a character, you were on stage, you have a director, and you said part of that process is to try things that are a bit outrageous sometimes and that might not work, might just seem stupid in retrospect. I don't know. But what is the value really of being able to do that, to actually just have
in
that
a real life situation or in an acting?
In whatever springs to mind. I was kind of more, what was prompting me to ask the question was the acting, but I think given these lines between the two seem to be quite blurry anyway, you can feel free to answer the question however you like. But
certainly in an acting sense, in terms of taking risks, is what I want to know is where is a good place, or where is it comfortable for you to be doing so, or is that what you're...
Do you know, for me, it's more about the thing itself, the thing that you can have a space that is safe and non-judgmental, where you can take risks. Like, what is the value of that space for an actor?
If you don't feel so, in the acting group I'm in now, if you'll see, I've worked with actors since the start who were with this group since the start for 7, nearly 8 years or something like that now. I think being comfortable in that space and not feeling like someone's going to take mick out of you, or you things that you do or say are going to fall on deaf ears. To know that you're going to be kind of acknowledged one way or another, and to know that you can take those risks, it fuels confidence. There's a guy I've worked with for years now, and he definitely started on a kind of confidence scale as like a 1 or a 2. Like, he showed up and he gave effort, but his confidence was not there. He wasn't willing to take risks because he wasn't comfortable and confident. He didn't know people. As that time grows and you work in the group and you see how a group can work, you see friendships, you see relationships, you see, like me, for example, with Tina, the director. I know I can take risks. I've known her for years. She knows what I'm like. I know I can take those risks because it's a comfortable place. I know if it's not good, she'll just tell me. That's not going to work. That doesn't make sense. Anything like that. If it does work, the payoff's brilliant because you have that part of you. You've been acknowledged for something other than just being on stage, being told what to do. You've been acknowledged for being creative and being confident enough to kind of stand out and go, I'm going to try this and see if it works. So the value of having that space, I think, like I said, the guy I mentioned earlier, he was a 1 or 2 on the kind of scale of confidence. He's now like a 8, 9, 10 area because he's so comfortable and happy with the environment he's in that it allows you to be more creative, to take those risks. And it does, like I said, it's fuel for confidence if you have that safe space to take risks and to not feel like you're going to be persecuted or punished for them, to feel like you're going to be acknowledged one way or another. And if it doesn't work, it's just a lesson you've learned. That's all it is. If it doesn't work, that's not the thing that they're looking for this time. And again, directors give feedback constantly. So if Tina says to me, for example, you've gone a bit too silly, it's a bit too big, bring it down a touch, bring it a bit smaller, bring it a bit more subtle, and try something that way, then you've got that immediate feedback on whatever risk you've just taken and gone, right, that was obviously too big a statement. I'll take it back a bit and try something else. And she'll go, yeah, that's it, perfect, keep it like that. And you've made your own contribution, you've just been coerced into it, I suppose. But you're confident enough to do it because you don't feel worried. So yeah, the value of having a space where you can take those risks is like I said, it's fuel for confidence.
It's a controlled risk.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's like the safety of the space means that, or the conditions, at least in your case, is that the judgment is not about you or your disposition or a character flaw. It's about the actual character that you're playing, the role that you fit in. So any criticisms can kind of be swatted off if they become too personal because you're not playing you.
I take it personally, and I always do that. I'm quite my own worst enemy when it comes to acting and making stuff like that. I'm still scared of sharing stuff sometimes, and I'm pushing on it. And I always worry that it's my worry is that it's not good enough. That's my main worry. But you take the risk because you're confident to do so. And yeah, it's 100% like it's a safety net and it's a comfortable place to be able to do it. And yeah, I still take it personally. And it's like going to an audition, anything like that, I suppose, is even though you're not being yourself and you are being a character, the choices you make are still yours. So you make these choices for this character. It's still my idea. It's not my character's idea. It was my idea to put it into the character. If it's not successful, that's on me. And so yeah, you still take it personally, but without having the confidence and the comfortability, I suppose, to risk it and take a chance. You wouldn't get sparks of brilliance. I think that's the thing, is again, been doing it for that long that you see moments where someone just takes a risk and tries something and you go, wow, that's amazing. Like what you just did there was brilliant. I've got a friend who's professional now, and again, an old show where we all had to do a lot of different characters, and he just took risks after risk on every single one, ridiculous characters, but they were natural enough that they were so far removed from him, but fitted each character. But I mean, they were big risks as well. The voice changed, limps came in, everything. He was just risk galore. Couldn't care less. He threw himself into it, and every single character was a moment of brilliance. Like you watched every single one, going, "Wow, this guy's good. I want to be like him." So it's worth having, like I said, the value of having a safe space to be able to risk with no kind of serious repercussions, I guess. Because
I think there's a relationship there between the risks that you're willing to take and the quality of the character then as well, you would think, in that maybe the industry selects for risk.
I think as far as the industry goes, I think risks and bold choices, they will get you so far, I guess. I mean, industry is different to how I act in this specific group. But if you make a bold choice and it's relevant to the character and it makes sense, then that you'll be noticed. Again, they've always said you notice someone who sticks out from the crowd. You don't notice if you're just the same as everyone else. So yeah, definitely, if you're making a bold decision, but it's bold enough that it works. Again, the only way you can get to that point, in my opinion, is to be able to have that space to start off with, to feel a lot of people do. They're just really, really confident people. I'm not one of those people. I wasn't certainly at the start of this kind of joining this theatre group after uni. I definitely wasn't, a most confident person in the world. But years of doing it, yeah, I do feel confident now taking those risks in that group. It's a whole other step to jump and do it for auditions and do it in the industry and to go, you know what, yeah, I'm really happy with this decision I've made. I'm going to go through it and push on with it. But yeah, I think, like I said, a group like who I'm with it's a brilliant foundation for kind of pushing on with, with confidence, being able to take risks and take those chances. And yeah, probably it will be rewarding in the industry to an extent. Yeah, definitely. It's being able to do it every time, though, I suppose.
I suppose it's trying to keep that balance that we've spoke about a few times there. But you would think the most memorable characters that people have created or that people have portrayed have been the ones who are maybe a little more idiosyncratic and have their own thing going on
definitely.
than others.
Right?
Nobody wants to. We spoke earlier, and one of the things we mentioned was about when we talk about that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, it's kind of got something to do with it. But when you're just drawing on something that's extrinsic and you've never really experienced, you're just kind of taking this rough concept of, in that case that we mentioned, it was arrogance. But if you're somebody who's not experienced a different emotion, it's just that. And if your character is just filled with all of these things that are extrinsic, that you've not directly experienced, if it's just that, the character just seems pretty bland, you would think.
Not necessarily. Again, it's for different styles of acting. So the characters you're thinking about, like we mentioned the Joker, for example. Now that Heath Ledger's gone through a lot of method acting for that, he's put a lot of research in. I don't think he's had, psychotic kind of tendencies. I wouldn't have thought so anyway. So in which case, that's all extrinsic. That's not something that he's drawn on from himself. That's research that he's done, that he's put into it. But again, I don't think anyone would quarrel with the fact that actually, as much as the character's, eccentric and far out and not necessarily realistic, but he is naturalistic. If you get that, so you believe he's a character, you believe he's a real person. The character is just a ridiculous character, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you think this guy's actually a real maniac. Like, I think that
yeah.
So in that respect, I don't think having extrinsic, what's the word?
Extrinsic, it's okay.
Extrinsic kind of things to draw from and bring them into a character. I don't think they harm it.
Well, it's not that for me. It's really the difference between Heath Ledger playing the Joker and you playing Bottom, and it's that Bottom is, as you said, like a pantomime.
Yeah.
It's just a stereotype of arrogance. It's not. And I'm saying a character that just fits a stereotype is a bit bland compared to the Heath Ledger character of Joker, because that particular character is not just fitting into the stereotype of villain or baddie. He's got all these kind of personality quirks, the way that he moves his mouth, what he does with his tongue, his posture, his voice changes, all these sorts of things. They're kind of the touches on a character that sets it apart from just being this bland stereotype.
But like I said, in the same respect, that's exactly what Bottom was. Because, I explained earlier in the same sense, my posture changed, my accent changed, my voice changed, the way you move changes. If you're going to do a character justice, you still have to bring those things in. You can't just walk around stage as yourself. It might have been a stereotypical.
Yeah, I may have implied a false.
No.
I may have implied a false analogy there. I obviously.
I knew it. I know what you're getting at.
You can put Bottom and Heath Ledger as character, all of these things in the same class. There's just an opposite side to that where there's just these stereotypes, and those characters are bland. We have nothing to resonate with them. We find dull.
Yeah. I think two of the ways I've seen that most people kind of are drawn to characters, especially for me again, because I've played a lot of comedy roles, so this is the first one, is making an audience laugh. I've had debates with people, and the way I honestly believe is the hardest thing to do with an audience is to make them laugh consistently. Now that is difficult. don't get me wrong, it is extremely difficult to get them to emote, to genuinely feel upset or angry or whatever. But I think a lot of that can be done with other things. Other things can help you with that, with music, for example, or struggling to think of examples. But basically, yeah, I think aside from that, comedy, I think is a hard one. It's a really difficult one to kind of bring people in, and to get, like I said, yeah, to get them to laugh constantly. And I forgot where I was going with this. What was the second one? I forgot what the first question was now.
Well, I guess I would just be interested to say you were trying to list examples of things and you that persuade an audience to feel or to emote or to think something.
Sorry, yes. The comedy I think is a tough one. And then like you were saying, is something relatable. So you've got to see some kind of, you've got to see a bit of human in someone, or you've got to see some idea that they understand or something that makes sense. So again, the Joker is ridiculous. In fact, I use a different one. I use a more ridiculous one. Is the whole Thanos in Avengers. The people like that character, and people actually like him as a real bad person, because his idea actually wasn't that bad, and you kind of understood where he was coming from. And although most people would say it's a flawed logic, there was a logic there. There was something that made sense, and you can see that he wasn't 100% just the worst of the worst. There was something in there that made him relatable.
I get that. Yeah, well, there's got to be. I used the word earlier to latch, but there's got to be something about a character to latch onto for an audience in the same way that it has to be for an actor, because people are kind of putting themselves. You see, they say this with art anyway, don't they? This is a common phrase that you see yourself in the art, like the art is a mirror for you.
I have a tattoo.
Look at whether that's a portrait or an actor.
On my arm.
That phrase?
Yes. Love the art in yourself, not yourself in the art. It's a Konstantin Stanislavski quote. There you go.
Oh, well. I can't claim to have known that. I had no prior knowledge of that. I wasn't clear on that. But yeah, well, there we go. I do think that, though. I really do think that. And you see yourself in it. So if I'm sitting in the audience watching you or anybody else portray some character, I am in touch more with that character if they're doing something that I could imagine myself doing, even if it's something so hideous. In the case of something like Thanos or some pantomime baddie, or whatever it might be, any kind of evildoer portrayed on TV or whatnot. Even if they're doing those things, if there's something that you can kind of glue yourself to, whether that's just an emotion or a drive. I mean, they use the term motivation a lot in acting, don't they? So that's a bit of a stereotype as well.
But I certainly think, what you're definitely right. And I'd say the other two, like the other thing, like is it's sympathy and empathy. I think come a lot into it, especially from an audience point of view, and into an actor, into what they're seeing. Like empathy, I'd kind of go with the same as what you're saying, is latching onto is the kind of they get it, and they, you can either see yourself character. You can see yourself doing what the character's doing, or you can at least understand it, I suppose. And that's what I kind of categorize as the empathy. The sympathy is more of the kind of, it's just feeling bad for someone in it. but it's sympathetic. You watch someone break down, you follow. The great thing with, like, for me, for live theatre is in an hour and a half, you see someone's almost year-long story. You see a lot of their life there and then in that small segment. So you get a good feel from, if you empathise with them, you're latching onto them, and then by the third act, someone's usually died, because that's what usually happens. Something tragic happens, and in which case you turn to sympathy as well. It's not just the empathy; it's the sympathy, and you feel bad for the character, you feel bad for the people there. Audience members walk away saying, "I can't believe so and so died. Like, heartbroken. I was in pieces. I was crying my eyes out." I've been to shows. I've been to the cinema, whatever. I've walked away and I've been like, I can't get over it. I can't believe it. It's not because it's real. It's because, I've either seen something of myself in him, or I've understand where they come from, or I've just genuinely felt bad for him in the end. You feel, and I think that, again, that's more testament than anything to this kind of story writing and the script, more than anything. But as much as the actors bring it to life and the directors have the vision, I think when the screenwriters or the story writers, anyone who has anything to do with writing the actual scripts. I think without that, I think you're going to struggle anyway. So I think from actors' creativity point of view and what the audience is going to take away, that script needs to be amazing in place before you can kind of even begin to bother with trying to. You can't put a brilliant actor into a terrible script. I mean, you've seen it so many times in box office swaps and whatever. It doesn't matter how good the actor is. If the movie's terrible, if the script's bad, if the story is flawed, you're already fighting a losing battle, I suppose.
Yeah, you want to stack the decks a little bit. I wonder, just for the sake of clarity, maybe, could you just say something about what the difference is for you between sympathy and empathy?
For me, what I've always thought, anyway, is empathy is more of an understanding. I think to truly empathise with someone, you should be able to. is to be able to understand on a full basis of, I have possibly experienced the same emotions that said person, character, whatever is going through. I think that's where true empathy comes from. I think sympathy is just is not to be able. You don't fully understand it, but you can still feel bad about it in a sense.
My view of that is very similar to something we already spoke to, and the difference between sympathy and empathy is that with empathy, that's being able to relate to the emotion and say, I can imagine what it's like to feel that, because I felt something that's probably similar. Whereas sympathy is more to do with that being conscious of it. So you can say, I'm not sure what the emotion might be, but it looks like you feel pretty bad, or I'm aware that I'm taking some cues from elsewhere, so I'm able to be conscious of that, and I can see.
You use different words, but that was the same thing, yeah. You made it a lot more clear. Well, that's basically what I was trying to say, yeah.
I'm studying a master's in philosophy. I should be all right with words at this point.
You're not bad. I'll give you that.
Idea now.
I don't write the scripts. I just read them. I'm not here for
You're better at reading than me, maybe. Then I'm not very good at reading.
No, I'm terrible. You can just about learn lines now.
I think that's quite a nice way to end on, having a bit of a laugh. So let's leave it there. Of kind of being conscious of your time, I suppose. Where is the best place to find your work, maybe to see it? Or?
Generally, in on the Act Theatre Group at the Theatre Royal Wakefield. It's going to be a while before we're all kind of back up and running. We did have a show scheduled for March and October, which have both been cancelled for now. So in on the Act, though, is where you'll mainly see me until I'm a huge celebrity movie star. But yeah, and
it's more live theatre, stage performance.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10 is usually Wakefield Theatre Royal. We've done some site-specific stuff, but that's usually where you'll find us. And if anyone wants to know anything about us, we're on the website under. So yeah, that's what you'll see.
I'll add links to that in the show notes.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show.
All right, thanks for having me.